It is 2024.
Wow.
Yeah.
Where in the F did that year go?
I already screwed up the year. I don't know if you guys have.
I haven't yet. No.
I did
all
a
the
beautiful
time.
reel, and it was like, what we're leaving behind in 2023. And I was like,
Okay, moving
I
on.
know. So I'm glad.
No,
you
I
did.
don't know if you did screw that up. Anyway, sorry, we're getting off topic. Guys, we are so excited to be back in the studio now after taking a little bit of a break. We have a girl power in the house. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Some woman, girl power,
Oh, like a
kick ass.
woman power, a powerful woman.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah,
Okay.
we'll do that. We have a powerful kick ass
I don't
woman
know
in
what
the house.
resonates with you.
I'm trying to think who's
Absolutely
coming
it
in
does.
through the door.
I know Tamara thinks very, very highly of you.
Yes.
So
Well, the feeling's very mutual.
I'm sure it is.
It's Trisha Nelson. So if you want to take the lead and tell us a little bit
Yeah,
about
welcome. Who are you? Tell us your background and credentials.
yourself. What, why, where, and how?
Okay. Well, I was born in no. Yeah. So I'm a registered psychotherapist. I am very fortunate to have Tamara as a client.
Yes.
And I am qualifying, so that means that when you become a registered psychotherapist, there is a period. It's like I wouldn't call it probation, but it's a time
Right.
you really got to learn.
Like
There's-
residency?
Yeah, I guess
Yeah.
that would be similar, right? And you have a supervisor. And I think even when you're not qualifying, it's always nice to have a supervisor because you're dealing with some real hard issues, right?
Yep.
So I really just finished up doing my master's of counseling just before Christmas, and
Wow.
so yeah,
Through Queens or?
it's actually through Yorkville University.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and when I was looking for a practicum placement, I found Cassandra Millen. I just scored.
We
with
all
that.
know her very
Yes,
well. She's
yeah.
been featured on 2 of our episodes.
She's an alum on the podcast.
Oh yeah. So, and I ended up, and I'm a small town girl, so to come to Napanee and get a practicum, because I thought, oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to go to Ottawa or Toronto,
Right.
and here I was like, oh, perfect. And yeah, so I started with her last May,
Wow.
and finished up again in December with her, and she and Stacy welcomed me to stay with,
That's wonderful.
and trying to make this like build a collection, like
Well, they're really growing so
Yeah.
much, and they have had a lot of momentum since they launched like their partnership essentially, right?
yeah.
That's really wonderful. and
So
exciting
yeah,
for
so
you.
Trisha now has you have like a position underneath this collective
Right.
of therapists.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's Onward and Upward therapy?
Inward.
Sorry,
So-
inward.
I know.
Oh my gosh, why did I?
But that's what the.
I thought you
normally
just
is, right.
I just
Like
thought you
inward
meant the
and upward.
expression
Yeah.
like upward and onward. I didn't.
No, and that's the saying, right? And I
Yes.
switched it up because for me,
Was
inward.
it originally Onward, or is that just something I put in my head?
No, but that's the saying, isn't it? Onward and upward.
Yes. Okay.
Right.
maybe.
Onward
That,
and
that
upward.
people.
But
use.
inward, I get that. Like you're focusing in your inner self to
Right.
move up
Correct.
and on.
Correct.
I love
know.
that.
I know. So, and it gets people talking and arguing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. There we
Yeah,
go.
what is it? But yeah, for me, that was like self-reflection, self-awareness, that inner peace. And then
Yes.
upward is anytime looking up is something positive. So, right?
Yeah.
So that's where I kind of, it's just a little cheeky too.
Yeah, absolutely. Did your daughter help you with that?
Actually, I gave her some ideas. Like I do, yeah, I've bounced a lot of things off my daughter.
Yes.
I did send a few things to her, and that one, she like thumbs up.
Kinda stuck.
And I was like,
Aw.
I
So,
love
yeah.
that. I love
Yeah.
that. So,
And you
okay,
mentioned
have
you-
you always been a therapist, or is this
Oh.
something new? We would love to hear like all about the core to the tip of.
okay. Well, I've always been in healthcare.
Yes.
So my background's in nursing. So prior to having children, I was a nurse, and I did that for a little while until I was blessed to be able to stay home with 2 kids. So I have a son who's 23 and my daughter's 24.
Very close in age.
Yeah.
How many months apart are they?
13.
So are my boys.
Wow, Katie has
It's
turned her 2
crazy.
as well.
Yeah. Yeah. That's when I first introduced myself to coffee. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
I
Yeah.
understand. Yeah, I
Yeah.
get it. Yeah, I'm a twin, so I feel like I can
Oh
never
my
complain
gosh.
to my mom,
Oh,
right? 'Cause
Yeah.
she's like, I had both of you, and yeah. So
Yeah.
there's that. But okay.
So yeah, I started as a nurse, and then went on maternity leave. And while I was on maternity leave, I ended up going back to school and got my degree in disability studies. And actually why I did it at the time was my son was actually, they thought he had autism. They really thought he was on the spectrum, but it turned out it was another medical condition. And needless to say, I first took I think it was the DSW program at St. Lawrence College.
Now, is that developmental social work?
Developmental service
work.
And I was just trying to learn as much as I could about everything. And then
You're a great mom.
No, that's
really like diving into, you know, like what you feel like
absolutely.
that's a big deal.
Yeah, well, you're scared, right? You're going, okay,
yeah.
how are you going to support this kid? And so initially I did that, and then I pursued my degree. I learned about this program at Ryerson University, and I think it's called Toronto Metropolitan or something. Now they've changed the name anyway. So I went and I did my degree through them, and I kind of had a switcheroo while I was in that program. My dad actually struggles with PTSD. He's a retired Ontario Provincial Police scuba diver.
Oh,
so,
wow.
Yeah, he had a very...
Can we get him on the podcast next? That's
Ooh, yeah.
Get the
I'll
whole
ask.
fam.
yeah.
So wow, so that's a very intense job, I'm sure.
Yeah, it was. And it was hard watching him struggle growing up.
Absolutely.
So even though I went in kind of going this way, my last year, I remember my thesis was all on post-traumatic stress disorder, but I really highlighted like the stigma around it, like, and with men not being able or not feeling safe to talk about it. Right?
And being back then too, this is how many years ago?
Oh, well, without giving my age away, it was quite a few years ago, right?
Yeah. So even back then, like, it's so new feeling, I would feel like, because for me, it's still so new feeling to society.
Yeah, it's still, and there's still some stigma. Right?
Mm-hmm. I feel like, in my opinion, it's not like, from being on the outside and like not personally experiencing that, I think for me the stigma is feeling or kind of just being made aware of it, that it is for, you know, veterans or, you know, things like that, but not actually how it can affect like a neighbor or like somebody close to you, right? Like in different situations, in different scenarios, how like I just feel like my brain was trained to think that it
was
only
just
applied
for people
to
in
one
army.
to one like aspect of like life or one position or so I just find that like the more I hear people talk about it and the more that I see that it is the same as like any other, you know, depression or anxiety or things, like it does not have just like one face.
You're absolutely right. Right.
One person with PTSD is just one person.
Yeah.
So your father's a first responder in this case.
Yeah, well, he was actually, unfortunately, most of his was, you know, the person had already drowned and he had to go in and find it. And he did ice diving. So a lot of his was people going through the ice. And it, like, not to get into that, but it was a hard job. And it was scary every time he did the ice dives, too, because he was essentially putting his life at risk. So anyway, he really struggled. He did end up kind of ending his career a little earlier than he thought, but that was a real biggie because I really I saw how he struggled. And I also know my grandfather too was he was in the war, lost his leg. He was actually drafted and I have to brag about this, he was drafted to be a professional hockey player. He was in Detroit
That is a brag.
Detroit Red Wings. He was drafted to do that, and then he got called to serve, and he stepped on a mine and lost his leg. And anyway, also seeing him struggle because he had this tough facade, right? And when he came back,
this envision of what would life be like after, and now
plans have changed drastically.
Yeah.
So both men had significant parts of my life. You know, my love and respect for them both and what they did and the sacrifices. So. But just trying to, I guess, learn how to support that. So I was actually doing quite a bit of work, I guess, on the side. I was actually talking to, you know, people in Ottawa. I remember with my thesis, Pamela Walling. You probably don't remember her, but she used to do TV quite a bit, but she became... I'm not sure what kind of politician. I think she's a senator now. But anyway, so I was really thrown into that and just learning how
Did you feel like it became like as you learned more and kind of like furthered your education, do you feel like having those experiences that kind of became a sense of responsibility to you?
Yeah, it does, right?
Yeah.
It does. It just becomes such a big part of your life. So anyway, fast forward after I got my degree, and I actually thought I would be working with first responders or something else, and just going through some of my own life experiences that, you know, prevented me from working here or there. I did end up working instead with people with intellectual disabilities, psychiatric disabilities, and a lot of them, they all had some kind of trauma, right?
Was there any acquired brain injuries as well in the loop? So that's a very hard, like you get the comorbids of on top of a brain injury, but suffering with some sort of mental health as well.
So it still kind of had that little piece
Absolutely.
to it, right?
Okay.
It feels like life, like just listening to you talk, it feels like life kind of like had its plan, and you were just being
we
like
talk a lot
led.
about this, and where the
Right?
universe
Like just
has-
it's funny, like because you kind of started one way and thinking that it was going to be this, and then it shifted a bit, then thinking it was going to be, and then shifting. So that's kind of nice. Keeps things exciting for you, I'm sure.
Yeah, exciting sometimes wasn't the word, but yeah, that's very true.
Yeah, of
bittersweet
course. In hindsight now.
Right, bittersweet.
Yeah.
So is that where you were up until?
Yes. So up until I guess it was around 2020. Life threw me a big curveball, and I ended up actually in counseling through victim services. And I had never gone to counseling. And actually, my kids they were very pro mental health, right? And I was like, oh, I don't need it.
Yeah, of course.
Okay,
Yeah.
I do think that just based on conversations that I've had, like in my own life, I feel like certain people, and I know we've already talked about your age, so I'm not saying this as anything, but I do feel like after, you know, our parents or anyone else get past a certain point in their life, they feel that isn't an option for them anymore. Yeah. Or, you know, I've had this conversation with my own mom that, like, you know, she's like, oh, well, you know, it's done, it's gone, it's whatever, like, this is how I am.
But
you
it
know?
doesn't have
like,
to be.
No,
Yeah.
and I do think, though, like, just almost as much as, like, men need to seek out more mental health supports, also, like, people in older generations, right,
True.
also need to understand that they have a lot of healing to do. Not that I'm saying for you, but just in my own personal experience and my own life.
I think that's where, like, the generational trauma comes through, right? Like when we talked about this on our last podcast with Stacey and Cassandra about how generational trauma can travel through different generations. And, you know, it's funny because my mom is a very big mental health support and advocate and lives with it herself. And it's like, you know, I just don't understand why you guys or you kids have so much mental health. And I'm like, well, let's sit down and note this. Because you guys didn't talk about it. You covered it or masked it.
Or didn't recognize.
Or it wasn't recognized, right? So let's undo that Pandora box.
Absolutely.
And I know you and I will often talk about it, like, so when you were younger, you know, those core beliefs that you were instilled as when you were younger.
That's right.
So I know, like, I just not to get too off topic, but that imposter syndrome feeling.
Oh, absolutely.
I've recently turned 31, and I say this often, like, what the fuck am I doing with my life? What am I doing with my life, Trisha? Like, you know,
I feel like you're
what
never
am I doing with my life? Like,
have
I've
an
had
answer though to that. I
and
feel
there's
like
not. But, you know, I've just had such a huge shift in having to rebuild my life when there's moments where I don't want to.
Yeah.
But where am I going? And again, I think that whole stigma on society, and you have to be married by a certain age, have these kids, this education, and
but also be like always doing something and busy and achieving.
Nobody can be bored anymore.
Yeah.
And just relax, right?
I can't. I mean, like, I can't speak for myself because I can't do that. But
I feel like
you should do that.
You should too.
But okay, so you started counseling. Like, you were going to counseling for yourself, and that was your first experience with it.
Yeah.
And at this point, you were enrolled in your program, knowing that this was
No.
So you were working in the field, and then
So, and I was I don't know. I did my counseling. I was a big chicken. I was just like, I don't need this. I'm gonna push through it. So I did it over the phone. I didn't even see what my counselor looked like. But
it was through COVID too, right at the beginning. So
actually, yeah, you're right. That's right.
So that would have limited a lot of opportunities or resources.
Yeah, I could have done Zoom, I guess. But
Right.
I was.
there's that technology, though.
Yeah, there you go. That trigger. but I'll admit it was shame and guilt of the situation and having to get help, and that I felt safer. Okay, we'll just talk over the phone.
Kind of your disguise.
Yeah, that's what I did. And so I saw her for a little over a year, and not to jump around too much, but we
jump around a lot.
Okay, good.
We always do it.
I usually like to keep everybody on track. I feel like that's my only job in this.
I feel like I redirect.
No? I don't know. Counseling. Let's go back and do a count.
But sorry, I know what you're going to say, but before you stop, do you think you had a really hard time going into counseling because you were always the one fixing things or trying to help others in a way?
Maybe some level. Like I do say with nursing, we do, I don't want to say we counsel, but we do sit with a lot of stuff, right?
Yeah.
We do kind of do that talking and build that therapeutic rapport with
Absolutely.
Right? So, yeah, probably,
Maybe you also felt like it couldn't go deeper than that.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. That's, very true. So
that was
around
a good
Tamara
one.
a lot.
So you don't know, right?
So you were going to say that recently you...
Yeah, I met my counselor for the first time. It was 2 weekends ago.
Wow.
I finally,
In what setting did you meet them?
Would you believe at a bar?
Why not?
Yeah, it was like a bar restaurant. And
that's amazing.
Yeah, we sat there for 4 hours and just, and I filled her in how,
That's so
how
wonderful.
it evolved. And yeah, it was when I was getting counseling from her during that year in 2020, she said, have you ever thought about becoming a counselor? I'm like, no. And she says, well, I think she used the term I was well seasoned, which is, I guess to say,
yes.
well practiced, old. I don't know, but she was just like, you can really empathize.
Yeah, you have a lot of experience and a lot of
experience in different walks and forms of life, obviously in your career and also in your personal life.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, and I thought, okay, I'm gonna look into
see what it is,
and bam, and then
and it was a good fit.
Did the first year, I thought, oh my gosh, I'm too old for this, right? And then the second year, I was like, okay, I gotta get.
You're committed now.
Yeah, and then I was doubling up on courses and going, okay, I just gotta push through, and yeah, so finally, once all done, we had made an agreement that we would meet in person, right? When I was all done, yeah, and it was emotional, right? It was.
That's a big full circle moment.
It was like I really owed her a lot in my mind because she gave me
direction.
She built me back up, right? I was right, and I think sometimes people don't realize, one sentence can change everything for a person.
Or even putting it into perspective.
Yeah.
Or shedding light on something.
Yeah. And it was just that empathy I needed at that time, or some validation of what I was feeling. It was whatever it was what I needed in the moment. And so
and it set you on this path.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
That is so beautiful.
For getting through that. I mean, especially with kids and things. Were you working at the time?
Yeah,
as well?
I worked part-time. I dropped down the last 6 months to casual just because I was getting a little burnt out.
You're a little busy.
Yeah. So, but yeah, it just, the first year was the hardest, I have to say. But again, then when I started practicum in Napanee under Cassandra, I mean, I won the lottery there, having her as a supervisor.
She's
and
wonderful.
Yeah, it was really great. And she really gave me a lot of autonomy. Like, yeah, you just once in a while, check in and stuff, but she was just so much trust in me. And of course, in the back of my mind, I'm like, she's built this reputation, and that too is like, I'm going to make sure I wanted to make her proud, right?
Of course.
Too.
Yeah, you most certainly have.
And fulfill that for sure. Yes, absolutely. That's wonderful.
How has the switch, do you think, going from physical health approach to more of a holistic one been for you?
I'll be honest, and I don't know, I can't speak for everyone who does in counseling, but you get attached, say, in the hospital to patients and stuff. But this, like you said, on a much deeper level now, right? Mm-hmm. That you're just, you do kind of take it home in the sense that you want them to leave there feeling, first of all, like they're the most important person in the room, right? And when they leave, it doesn't shut off, right?
Right.
You think, okay, like even little things, okay, I hope the drive home's okay. I hope this wasn't too triggering.
Because you care. You
Yeah,
care about
you
them, and
absolutely
you develop
do.
those relationships.
Yeah.
Can I ask before, like, because I want to keep talking about that, but when you were in nursing, like, where were you in nursing?
Oh gosh,
Like,
yeah.
a little bit of everything? Were you in the
Yeah.
hospital? Or
I started in Providence Manor,
Okay.
and then I went to St. Mary's on the Lake.
So very intense.
Yeah, and then I did some home care, and then my husband at the time was he got accepted into a chiropractic college down in the States. So then I moved, and I had to get my license in the States of Missouri.
Wow.
So worked down there, then came back, worked in the OR.
Okay, wow.
Very
and-
So you were in a
intense.
lot of like intensive care or like high needs care?
Yeah, OR is really actually a very much a hands off because you're really just getting
Support.
But I was also working. I did some at a doctor's office, which that to me wasn't as fulfilling.
Were you
Yeah.
utilizing your skills
Yeah,
as much?
yeah.
Yeah.
And then we had discussed I was going to stay at home, and so I did, and
Yeah.
I was really lucky, and that's when I decided career change and everything
Yeah,
else,
of
and I
course.
let my license kind of
And you also deserve that time to go back to yourself. You've taken time to raise your kids, and now, right? I
yeah.
feel like a lot of people also struggle with that, you know, as their kids are getting older, as, you know, their kids are starting to make adult decisions,
Yeah.
right? Then
What is my
now it's-
identity?
it's-
Yeah,
it's your
right.
time. Yeah.
What is my identity now?
Absolutely. Just one of those things for us to look forward to.
So you were talking a little bit about, you know,
The
how hard
switch.
therapy can be at times being a therapist, because I know for us, there's been many times where we just sit there and you're like, you know, this is a really shitty situation, and I'm just going to cry with you, because that is the reality of it.
It is.
It's just, you're human. And I think that is why I feel so close to you, because you're not just, I've had therapists who are like, okay, remember to breathe. And I'm like, okay, man,
feel
I'm
like-
breathing, but like, can we just look at my situation right now?
Yeah,
Like,
I feel
tell me
like,
to fucking
though-
breathe one more time, right?
In
But
your
that's how
life,
I feel sometimes.
I feel like
Yeah.
in your life, it's good cop, bad cop.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm like, okay, like, you know, like whatever. And you're like, I'll cry with you. And I'm like, stop crying. Like,
Yeah, no, but it's
Yeah.
because you're not emotional. Well,
I
you
know.
are emotional, but at certain times,
I'm not emotional.
just let it go.
I
Let
did
it
cry once this
go,
week.
let it
Oh,
go.
you did?
Yeah, to me, it was
I
good. It
started
was a good
counseling
cry.
myself, actually.
Oh, good.
Yeah, we did couples counseling for a little bit, and it wasn't just the right time for us to do that because I just wanted to win.
Yes, absolutely.
yeah.
Actually, what did Cassandra say all the time?
Because I went with Joe, Cassie would always say, "You're not lawyers in the courtroom."
We're
She
not
said it a
lawyers in the
lot.
courtroom.
But so that was fine. But no, I went for myself, and it was my first. I'd seen, and maybe you can speak to this as well. So I had seen somebody. It wasn't a good fit. They were like, "You need a journal. You need to do this," and like,
Yeah.
that's not for me.
Yeah.
That's for Tamara, but that's not for me. And I saw somebody else, but that was like psychology. So that was just like a one-time
More of
thing,
an
and then they'll
intake.
like,
Okay.
yeah,
gotcha.
they'll refer you to a group, and I'm like, that's also not for me. So I have a counselor that I'm seeing now through my family doctor.
Okay.
And one of the things, I've had probably about 12 sessions now. And one of the things that I went in, and as I said, like, Remy, like, I can't cry. Like, I cannot cry. I don't cry. I want to cry. Like, I just don't feel like I've, like, allowed myself to, like, be at that, like, emotional level because I'm always, like, this and really shut off. And then a couple of weeks ago, I, like, cried at a session.
Mhm.
And then I cried at my last session. And
It's a
then I
safe
cried
place.
this week. And so
Yeah,
I do
yeah,
feel
you're
like
right.
that's, I feel like Cameron Diaz from the holiday that I'm like, I can't cry. But I do feel like, for me now that I'm like, okay, I feel like I've let myself be more
vulnerable.
But also too, maybe this is an opportunity for you to mention like how, because Cassie's talked about it too, is finding, you know, somebody that's a good fit for you when you are offering therapy. Obviously you care about your patients and you care about the people who are coming to seek you out. So also recognizing and knowing how you can support them in what they need.
And
right?
also how,
because what Tamara needs, I'm sure, would be really different than probably what I need.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And how you're kind of navigating
Yeah.
your sessions.
Yeah, and that fit is so important,
Yeah.
right? Like if you're not comfortable with your counselor, I mean, you're not going to benefit.
Get the most from it.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
what are some ways do you do you find that you help to build a rapport with somebody?
You know, we caution on the side of like disclosure, but you know, sometimes we disclose something about us to let the client know that, hey, maybe we don't totally understand everything like your experience, because that's your experience, but you know,
make them feel less isolated.
Yeah, and just say, okay, you know, I guess it's really maybe disclose something, maybe a struggle or something, or right,
or just a level of understanding.
Yeah. It's in how like non-judgmental. I mean, it's just like
You're human,
right? And
you're human.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people too, who want in person, sometimes need to feel the energy, if that makes sense.
I've done a couple phone calls, and I'm not sure about you, but I've done some phone calls, and I'll always try to go to be in person.
Yeah.
It's just much more organic.
I just feel like it's more
Yeah.
intentionally taking time for for myself.
Yeah.
I'm more intentionally like making time for that for me in my day.
Yeah.
Versus like I've had to do some phone calls. I've had a really busy day, or the kids are homesick, or whatever that looks like. And that time that I set aside for a phone call just doesn't feel as connected. Yeah.
True.
No, that's fair.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now that you have done this, I know we're jumping everywhere, but this just popped in my mind. Do your kids like seek out? Like, how's your relationship changed with your kids now that you have like all this information?
It is funny. And I don't think my daughter minds. She is very open that she has always struggled with anxiety. So she, you know,
we should
same
start a
girl,
club.
same.
Yeah.
yeah. So she, you know, before I didn't know how to support her. I'll be honest, the word anxiety wasn't used a lot.
Right.
Like when I was her age, we had something going on inside us, but I don't think we really named it.
Right.
You know, we'll say we were on edge or something. So when she was like in high school, like trying to understand this anxiety and I didn't know how to support her.
Right.
So I was really glad when she did get a counselor. But now, like, I will send her something and talk to her. Same with my son. You know, just
It's nice to have those resources.
it is. But then I also get, don't you use that psychology BS on me?
Oh my goodness, I hear that all the time in my relationship.
She's pretty
I'm
good at
not
it.
your client.
Tamara's pretty good at it. Like, you know, she brings that side out of her when we need it. But
yeah. As soon as I say, how does that make you feel?
Yeah.
Yeah, you get that look, right?
Let's reflect on our emotions right now.
I know what you're
I can
doing.
see that you're feeling this way. Let's label that emotion. Where does it stem from?
it's actually really
Doing
nice,
my homework.
though, that your
Good girl.
children have actually like started to build that relationship with their mental health before this became your role. Like, so actually it's just kind of funny, like, versus you stepping into this position now and needing to kind of like present it or kind of get them to see, like, they're very well versed, I'm sure, and especially your daughter, it sounds like, if she's been kind of going through the waves of anxiety, right? So it's nice that door was already open for you.
Oh, they were way ahead of me.
Yeah.
Like, totally. Like, I haven't even caught up yet, right? they're just, which I'm so happy. I remember, actually, I shouldn't say I'd never been to counseling. I went to one session. My son had asked me to go with him.
Okay.
And of course, I'm like, I'm going to be told what a bad mom I am. You know, it was like,
Because again, a lot of people think if they go to therapy, they'll be judged.
yeah. And it had nothing really. It was just something he wanted to share, and he just needed that
support,
right?
Yeah.
But of course, I was like, what?
Yeah.
But
that's wonderful.
Yeah.
So-
yeah, it was good.
That's great. Trish, moving on a little bit, I wanted to talk a little bit about the things that you specialize in with your counseling or therapy, and kind of what you do or how do you utilize them with your clients, I
Okay.
guess.
Like, what tools?
Like, can we start
Yeah.
with maybe emotional regulation? I know your emotion regulation, you're pretty, I mean, we do this a
Let's
lot.
talk about hypothetically if there was a 4-year-old that was having a really hard time self-regulating.
What would you do?
We had any advice for the parent of that child, hypothetically?
Hypothetically.
Because emotions are hard. I know for me, like, you can label those emotions and you can feel it coming and you're like, okay, if I don't go back to a 5 right now, I'm probably going to go to a 20 in like a couple minutes here. Like, that's my regulating.
His teacher, we had a teacher meeting this week, and I was like, I am working on my own self-regulation right now. Like, it's really hard for me to expect anything from a 4-year-old, but I'm like, I'm working through my own stuff right now. I have a question. I don't want to forget it, so we'll talk about it. But my question is, I want to know like what in this you feel like most passionate about, because I know like Cassie, for example, and like trigger warning, I'm not sure if Joe will put this on, but Cassie does a lot with like eating disorders and things like that. So I'm just curious, as you kind of go through some of these things, like if there's like a picture perfect, I don't know if I should say it that way, like a picture perfect client, right?
Yeah.
That like, you know, someone that you felt really equipped to or really passionate to be able to support in that way.
Okay, so when I first got done school, I was trying to figure out, okay, where did I really want to focus? And I really, it's hard, you know, you practice and you kind of do these little scripts, and they were fake, right?
Yeah.
You're practicing.
You're role playing.
Yeah, exactly. And once you kind of get into it, and as you go through clients, you start to, okay, where do I want to, I'll be honest, grief scared the heck out of me.
Yeah, of course.
It was.
Had you experienced grief in your life?
No,
Okay.
not like nothing significant. I was very blessed that, you know, yes, grandparents had passed away, but, you know, they had a long life, and so I hadn't lost anyone significant. And I do recall in practicing my head, I think my first week, you know, a few clients that had grief, and man, sitting with that just, but that, because it scared me so bad, then I went even deeper with it. So I was
You like a good challenge.
yeah, and it was just like, okay, you know, I could feel their pain, and I of course had that impostor syndrome, like how can I support these people? And so I took additional training in that, but I'll be honest, there's no training
I think with grief too, because I'm learning it's very complex, and a lot of other things get intertwined with if there was other moments. I mean, I remember sitting with my grief therapist just a couple weeks after Gwen, and I'm like, I feel like I'm grieving a relationship that I had 9 years ago. Like, why am I upset about this when I haven't even thought about it 9 years ago? And because they all kind of intertwine those emotions, and they're so heavy. And I think for myself, and maybe you can see this too with other clients, is we just want to fix it, but you can't fix grief. Like, you have to go right through it. And I think that's the most frustrating part, is because, again, as a society, we were taught it's 5 stages, and those 5 fucking stages don't mean anything.
And that's unfortunate that it's taught like that, right?
It was just very
misunderstood.
Yeah, misunderstood and misperceived, because it's not that at all.
Yeah, and you're trying to match those stages and trying to think, okay,
I'm here now, so I'm going to accept.
Trying to gauge, okay, where am I right now?
Yeah.
Where am I? When am I going to feel better? Okay, I'm 3, but then, okay, no, tomorrow I'm going to be 2.
Yeah. And people think, I remember feeling that. So I can definitely, I would be terrified to be in your position too, I think.
It was challenging, and it still is, but that is also, I'll have to say, the one I have come to like the most. And only, I guess the way I look at it too is when someone comes in and it's with grief, and get them talking about their loved one, they're really giving me a gift. I never had the opportunity to meet this loved one, and their face will be lighting up. They'll be sharing stories, and you know, and you of course, I've got my own picture, and sometimes they do bring pictures or whatever. And I'm going, gosh, I never got the opportunity, but through them sharing that with me,
it feels very like,
it does,
such an honor.
Oh, absolutely, it is an honor. You nailed that. That's for
grief
them
is love, right?
Yeah, and the deeper the love.
And I mean,
unfortunately,
what better way to hear about somebody from somebody who loved them the most?
Yeah.
Right?
And no one's going to come in either and focus on, you know, say if a husband passed away, that, you know, he never put the seat down, right? And the bathroom, like, they're not. They're right? They're going to focus on, oh, he was such a good cook. He always made me a tea in the morning, you know, and they're really, really focusing on all not positive stuff. Because we do all get lost, right, with everyday things, but no one comes in, and it's just. I
think that's a really good perspective, because it's like those little things don't matter, and when you lose somebody so quickly and so devastating as such, like, you know, a great loss, you realize that life really isn't just those finer things, like those bullshit little twisty things. Like, it's those moments, like making a tea for me in the morning, or coming home to a nice warm bath. And Katie's gonna laugh at me.
Big things, actually.
Katie's gonna laugh at me later for this, but it's true. Like, you learn to love those little things, and I know I can get caught up in shit and be like, this, and that. And then it's like, at the end of the day, it's like, but wait, like, that's not going to matter.
Right.
Right. It's not going to matter.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think too, even, and you can speak for it or not, is that like when you leave there, you are focused so much on the more positive, right?
Yeah.
And
I think sometimes, some things might matter.
yeah.
We have a husband and a wife in the room right now.
I saw the eye contact there.
Quite often you'll watch back and see her like make little smirks at Joey back of his head.
I was just gonna say, you know, like, I'll be the first client of yours, the first grieving wife that will be like, and he didn't fucking do this, but I'm really sad about it, but he didn't do that. Yeah, poor guy. But it is true, and that's really interesting, and that's lovely to know. And obviously, that's how you're here with us today, is that grief has kind of become that special area for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think a trauma is still, and that goes back to my dad and
The
you know,
PTSD.
right. So that was, I think, when I first got before I started practicum was the trauma piece. Eating disorders, yes. Cassie we've kind of worked a little bit with some clients and I'm open. I struggled with an eating disorder for years, so that to me I can really relate and kind of
Again, you're making that connection with your clients.
Yeah.
Having that personal, personal experience.
And as soon as they know that you have, right, or had that same struggle or whatever, you know, they can, because there's a lot of shame with that, right?
Put
a lot
the
of
guard
guilt.
down.
Yeah, so they can feel comfortable talking it, and you know, it's a coping mechanism, right? And you're trying to figure out, okay, some people drink, some people, you know, it's right. Everybody has
and all these
something,
other things,
right?
Yeah.
So that piece.
Can I ask a question about? For me, if I was a counselor, I would be terrified of that, because I'd be terrified of like the trauma grief side, because like Tamara just said, you can't fix it.
No.
So it's different. It's different than having a client come to you and say, you know, I'm really struggling with my relationship with my parents. I'm really struggling, you know, about my sexuality. I'm really struggling with this, whatever that looks like. And at some point there could be somewhat of an end goal to that. Say, okay, you know, this is our solution, or this is where we want to be really in that. And I feel like with grief and trauma, it's really obscure. Right. To be able to say, this is where, you know,
where is your end goal?
Where we want to be, or this is how we're going to solve these feelings. Like, right. It's just learning to sit with them. You say it all the time. Learning to sit with your grief.
And maybe it is, you know, just going a couple days without crying. Maybe it's a couple days that I can actually enjoy just reading a book and not having my thoughts take over. Maybe
you have to welcome her when she comes, and she's very nasty at times. Yeah. For sure, when grief comes knocking at the door. And I shared something the other day on my story, and it really, you know, when grief shows up to a party, because you don't know, you can go to bed feeling great, and then you can wake up and feel just totally defeated. And, you know, my moms have said this to me before, well, what's going on, Tamara? Like, you were just okay. And it's like, yeah, but it's just like,
it's minute by minute.
It's moment by moment, minute by minute. And
you say that all the time too. I feel like I could do a whole episode quoting Tamara.
But it very much is. And I've learned to own it. Like, if she's knocking at my door, I think that's where I learned boundaries.
Yes.
To saying no, or, and again, like we just talked about this recently, I broke, and I've, you know, just holding on to so much resentment and anger, and then, you know, you're hitting your breaking point, because you are literally tested every minute of the day when you have something like that.
You're exhausted.
Right? Exhausted. And I feel for people when they're going through the depths of it, because I'm like, what a scary time. I look back now and I'm like, wow, what a horrible time. I didn't know what I was doing, the disassociation, you know, and I see people going through that right now, and I'm just like, hang on. And, you know, will it get easier? Not necessarily, but it'll change. It'll change, and it won't be so prominent, like
always
every
so
day.
Intense.
Yeah.
So intense every day. You're going to have those intense moments, but they're going to be fewer apart.
Right. Not as heavy, not as lingering, but will it ever go
but
away?
it's heavy. No. And I think that's another really thing that, you know, and I was talking to a girl the other day who had lost a child and is, you know, pregnant with her rainbow baby essentially. And it's such a beautiful experience, but it's hindering knowing
Has
that
she shared that publicly?
what happened. Yeah.
Well, we
Yeah.
should shout her out.
Yes.
Episode 3.
Shout out to our gal.
Episode 3, 4, or 5. I'm not exactly sure. But shout out to Kate, who's now pregnant with
Expecting.
a baby.
Yeah.
So and it's just so beautiful, but again, it's that hindering of
that fear.
everything you go through. You're gonna feel it,
Yeah.
and I think that's you kind of grieve your life for that too, right? You'll always be a little bit sad.
Yeah, I can't imagine ever like, and again, I haven't had experienced any big grief, but okay, my grandmother but that was like 24 years ago. I still remember her like she was here today. So I think too, that piece, right?
It's still that's still grief.
Yeah,
That's still grief.
right.
Yeah. I think too, and we talked about it on another episode, is sometimes grief, to me, in my opinion, I have grieved. So my youngest son's deaf. I have grieved life for him, certain experiences that he won't have. I have grieved, you know, opportunities. We have talked about how grief can also show up
so
in
much
other ways and
You're
feel
absolutely right.
like grief that is not always the loss of a loved one.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely right. Divorce can be a grief.
Right.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So,
yeah.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. We have these
Relationship
dreams.
for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, it's a hard one.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's inevitable, and you know, everybody's gonna experience it in their own way. I think like even just seeing Tamara and I, obviously, like it's different because Gwen's Tamara's daughter, but I'm grieving Gwen too. That's why I cried this week. I would cry about it if I started talking about it right now. But I know, no, it's okay. I won't. It's fine. I had a dream about Gwen this week, and it was just a really emotional dream. And I was fine until I talked to Tamara on the phone about it, and just the way that it presented to me, it was just really intense, and I just like broke down about it. So I mean, like, you know, it's also hard grieving alongside somebody in a different way too, and how that shows up for me versus how that's showing up for Tamara, and also the past that we're on dealing with that grief too is really interesting on how everybody kind of, you know, is different in that. And I'm sure that makes your job really hard too, and you have to be mindful to
I guess a part with that is like Tamara's an excellent client, but I mean, I did break. I cried in one of hers.
Oh, it's okay.
Maybe a couple.
Cry
but
all the time. It's good.
And
she encourages
I
it,
wasn't trying. Like my biggest thing, I was like, oh my gosh, because she's apologizing. Like she goes, oh, I'm sorry, or something, and I was like, oh my god, I don't want her to think that I'm taking. This is about her, but it just the pain and not even wanting to imagine how hard this is for her.
I think for somebody like just my outside perspective, knowing Tamara, I think that you showing that level of vulnerability, that is like the most special to Tamara.
Oh, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
The fact, like, I don't ever feel like Tamara, like, I don't ever feel like Tamara feels that anybody's taking anything from her or like, you know, this is like, we're all feeling for her. I think that people, like, Tamara wants to know that everyone cares for Gwen just as much as she does, right? Even people who are just hearing about her for the first time.
Human.
Right? Yeah. So I think that that's like the most that you could give her as Tamara and I have been friends for a very long time. So I think just like hearing that, I feel like that is like the most. Yeah. I feel like that's
genuine,
the most that you could give her. For sure in that experience. I wanted to ask you, because I was reading through Tamara's list, because you mentioned this as well about imposter syndrome.
Oh yeah, big time.
Okay, so I feel like that in my business a lot, and I know a lot of other small businesses feel like that as well, you know, like especially like showing up on social media and things like that, and there being that new aspect of social media. What would you say to somebody that's like struggling with imposter syndrome or like battling their inner critic? Like
that's a good question. And I don't know if I can give a direct answer. I know it does take time, right? It does. And even if you can have a great session with somebody and they've said, oh, thank you, that really helped, sometimes you'll think, okay, they're just saying that, or you will constantly,
it helped, and then it, you know, then they'll fall back into it.
And I'll be honest, I think even Cassie has mentioned, like, she even struggles sometimes. Like, it's just, I don't think it's ever goes away.
Right.
And I think that's actually a good thing because that makes you care and you keep trying.
Yeah.
And you keep learning and you keep doing, right?
So it's shifting that perspective of it being like a negative thing.
Nobody could be, 100% fabulous business owner. Nobody, right?
Yeah.
Nobody could be the perfect counselor. It's just, you can't, right?
All you can do is keep working towards.
Yeah.
And I feel like, and for me is like reminding myself to always be competing only with myself.
Yeah.
Better yourself.
Especially in business, right? Only to be competing with myself and just doing more than what I was doing before, right? Because then I'm just trying to better myself and not worried about like what everyone else is doing or what everybody else is putting out. Or I think that's one thing that I need to.
Do you struggle with boundaries like in your life with that?
Do I struggle with boundaries?
I think you
I'm
did.
doing
I think
really
you're
good
doing
with-
a lot better now.
I think I'm doing really well. I'm not perfect. I'm not perfect at it, but
Nobody
but I do feel like I'm doing better with it. I feel like I've been more vocal about boundaries, less with business because I say yes to everything because I want to take every opportunity and because I'm passionate for that.
Okay, that's a different reason than just being, say,
Yes.
people pleasing or
Yes.
something, right?
Yeah, I think we've talked about this on the podcast before about like if I feel like I'm people pleasing, and I think you think that I am. Didn't we talk about this on the podcast? It doesn't really matter. I feel like I'm not a people pleaser.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
No, I guess, am I?
I
I don't know. I don't think so.
No. I don't think so.
Okay, do you think...
What makes you a people pleaser? Let's talk about what is a people pleaser.
Well, that's when you're putting like constantly your
uncomfortable.
needs and wants kind of backseat in somebody else's, right? Sometimes people do it though as a form of protection, right?
Yeah.
They people please because they don't want to be rejected.
I can relate
or
to
abandoned.
that
In some situations.
Yes.
with
Yes.
certain
Yes.
people in
Same.
my life. I know you're gonna say you're. I know I'm saying my MOM, my mom. I think of my mom when you say that because I want to protect her. I want to, so I take on way more than I should ever, or say like, she's coming to watch the kids, like, don't do the dishes, don't get them dressed, don't do this. Like, I've got all of it. I'm going to do it all because I just want it to be easy for you.
Mm-hmm.
So in that situation, in terms of like, I never thought about people pleasing as protection.
But you know what? And that is a good point because I feel like for so long, going back to my last counseling session, I have been swallowing my pride for so long because I don't want to upset other people, even though they've upset me more than once, to the point of, okay, you know what? Now I'm angry. And do you see that a lot with people pleasing? Like they get to the point where they just
Turns to anger,
lash
resentment.
out, and it is anger.
Yeah, that's that resentment's been building, right?
Yeah. You've been putting it on the back burner. You know what?
Yeah.
No, I'm not going to let it bug me. I'm not going to let it bug me. And then eventually I think you become angry.
Do you talk people into accountability that they didn't have the conversation and set boundaries and expectations?
Do I have that conversation? Oh, yeah, darn straight.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, it's a hard thing.
Yeah,
Boundaries.
it's very hard.
I just talked with on a I don't know, not a podcast, but a thing for my daughter's mental health nonprofit, Step Above Stigma. They had a thing on boundaries.
Step Above Stigma. Okay,
Yeah.
We're going to have her on. We're going to have her on.
Cool.
Yeah.
You can do that intro too.
Well, there you go.
But yeah, the boundaries.
It's really hard. People, I mean, people's core beliefs, which we've talked about, often limit people's ability to set healthy boundaries. And what I mean by that is like, I'm not good enough, my time isn't valuable, I'm unlovable, I'm unworthy or whatever. And then, you'll do things like the people pleasing, or maybe you're undecisive and you can't make choices because you want someone else to do it. So it's the accountability piece is on somebody else because you don't trust yourself, right? There's so many reasons for it, but it's really challenging people to set boundaries, like to say, okay, my time is valuable, and
well, it also, just hearing you say it that way too, it really seems like I just feel like you're dissecting this in a way that I've never looked at it before, which is awesome. That like these, this boundary and these people pleasing tendencies like actually stems from a lot of negative self-talk or insecurities and things like that as well.
Right. So how many like people that say yes and continue to say yes over and over because they think their value is equal to how many yeses they say.
Right. Or fear that they're going to upset somebody or
The
lose
FOMO.
a friend.
Yeah.
Fear of missing out too is a big one.
Yeah, fear of
When
that.
it comes to people pleasing.
Yeah, absolutely. Fear of rejection, abandonment, right?
Yeah.
Even if I rock the boat, you know, I'm not going to have any friends. You know, if I even hold my friend accountable because, you know, I keep paying for, say some students, right? They keep going out on the town and you're the one always paying for, say, the Uber, right?
Right.
I mean, that's a boundary, right? And you're teaching the other people how to treat you in a way that, okay, no, you know, Becky always likes to pay. Don't worry about her, Becky, you know, but that's a boundary, right? And you're going to build resentment, right? Because you don't say anything in those.
I think it goes back to you told me about the rat poison. Do you remember that?
Yes, but you want somebody else.
How does it go?
Okay, let me think about that one. Hold tight.
You think on it, because I just want to say just something that's kind of like coming to my mind about like something that happened recently too. Also, like once, I don't know, like I feel like once you put these boundaries in place that actually, and maybe you do lose somebody in your life, you actually have such a clear picture on like how that wasn't serving you.
Right.
Does that make sense? Like,
Absolutely.
I just think like there's all this fear, like, oh, I'm going to lose this person or this is going to happen. But then when it does, it's so clear to say, okay, well, that wasn't for me. And like the weight that comes off you is actually like well worth setting that boundary. And then you're also almost like you're mad at yourself. Like, why didn't I just do this sooner?
Exactly.
Because you do put like you express a lot of
rewiring
energy to
the brain and the way to feel and think and do.
Yeah.
I think, but back to the rat poisoning, I remember the analogy.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. I did say that.
analogy?
And
You
it's
did
like
tell me
you
something about
eating
this.
rat poisoning and hoping the other person gets sick, right? It's you.
Because by you not expressing to those other
Those
people how they make you feel, it's like
Exactly.
a slow death of yourself.
Yes. Yeah.
You eat rat poison and it doesn't affect them, but affects you over time.
Yeah.
So I always remember that.
Good.
That's like, have you
You
ever
remember
seen
that
That's
better
stuck
than
with
me.
me. That's
she
stuck with me.
has given me that. She has
Yeah.
told me that when
So speak what's on your mind, damn it. Just do
Yeah.
it.
Well, you think even like you say in relationships, right? Maybe, you know, one partner can set healthy boundaries. So say your kid's school, you know, they ask you to volunteer and you say, okay.
and I would say absolutely not.
Okay. Hubby says, okay, yes. And because he can't say no. And
He's
you're.
a people pleaser. I
Okay.
think he's falling asleep right now.
Is he?
Joey.
He fell asleep in Port Darcy too.
So every weekend, say he's the one that said yes to the school, and I'm not saying it's a bad thing to say yes, but he's overextended, and you know he sees you're taking a nap on the couch, you know. So I mean, he's like, okay, must be nice. And here I am overextending, but he starts getting resentment towards you.
Right.
No fault of you.
Or he
right?
says yes to every single other person that asks for help, but when I ask for help, hypothetically, he doesn't.
yeah,
Because
because
he's comfortable with you.
Yeah.
We're comfortable with you, Katie.
That's good. He doesn't have fear of abandonment. He doesn't think you're gonna leave him.
Yeah.
There you go.
I
So
know.
that, I guess, goes into self-awareness, too.
Yeah,
Right.
that's a huge piece.
That's
right?
probably a huge one that you're finding more and more of. People, like, needing to be self-aware.
That's what I actually brought up before with my counselor. I said it's that trying to figure out why I did the things I did and those patterns that I've fed, right?
Okay.
Like we kind of do set ourselves up, and again, we teach others how to treat us, and you might have a pattern of being the people pleaser or not feeling like your time is valuable, or it's okay if someone talks down to you or treats you a certain way, right? And those negative core beliefs too, right? And you keep repeating it through your life, and you're still getting the same, say, shit sandwich, right? That and you're going, what's going on? Well, you have to really take a look and see what else is going on.
What you're feeding into.
Yeah.
Do you ever feel like people have negative or like toxic behaviors and they're aware of them? Like, what do you do in the situation that like they're aware of them, but they're not at a mental place that they're ready to change?
Yeah, you know, I probably wouldn't, you know, shine a big light on them. I mean, it's funny. People maybe will pretend they're not aware. It's to a certain degree, we are all kind of aware of some of the things, right? And through the therapeutic relationship, you do kind of, because they kind of know when you're picking up.
Right.
You know, most people can kind of say, and I've had one client who just says, well, you know why I do that, right? Because I'm insecure. Like,
right.
he would, and I didn't have to address it. He knew, right? And it was just, he would say something a little negative every time he came in, or he would brag, and he says, I just say that because I'm really insecure, and he brought it to light. So, I don't think I've ever really had to, hold a flashlight up and said most people.
My counselor, one time I went and I was talking, because I'm like catching them up to speed on like, this is everything. It took 10 sessions to get them caught up to speed from where I'm at. But
so Katie, I don't mean to interrupt you, but Katie's the person that after her first session, she's like, I feel like I need to be the one that writes the what we're gonna cover that day and what we're gonna go over. Remy, and I'm like, Katie,
poor Remy,
will you just
I'm like, how many sessions do we have? How long are they? And Remy's like, okay, well, usually it's like 10 to 12, but like if you need more, like that's fine. So then I'm like coming in and I'm like, okay, we're at an hour. I'm just letting you know we're at 55 minutes right now. And Remy's always like, nope, I'm watching the clock. Like, you don't need to do that. And I'm like, okay, I'm not watching the clock, but we're at 45 minutes right now. And then I'm like, go in and I'm like, okay, we're at 11 sessions. Like, do you think we're good here? Like, can we keep going? Like, right?
Wow. Right? So, let them do their job.
So this goes hand in hand, because I said to Remy, I said, I'm a little bit of a control freak. No. And Remy said,
you're labeling, you're
Remy
recognizing
said,
that.
is that bothering you? And I said, no, it's not. It's not. So then Remy's like, okay, we're not going to talk about it then. I'm happy the way that I am in that right now. So that's kind of one of the things too, right? That people are
if
like,
it's not,
it's, it's probably like draining
I am
me,
what I am.
but this is working for where I'm at right now. And this is not something that there's a lot of other things that I need to unpack and work through, right?
Absolutely.
That's a safe one for me right now.
Yeah.
But so that was funny. But okay, so I would love to know your onward and upward, inward.
Onward,
upward,
inward and upward. But I want to cover brain spotting before we.
Oh yeah. Okay,
because this is the one that I did with Trish and
Cass right.
and them were kind of talking about how they were interested in it, but they have never really done brain spotting. So can you explain to us?
I'll try to explain it in the, because there's so much.
Terms.
I need a research paper to kind of show you. It's similar to EMDR, eye movement desensitized, and you've done that too.
I have done
okay.
EMDR, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Essentially, is where you look affects how you feel, but it's trying to get to those deeper memories or emotions that your brain is stuck. Basically.
Yep.
And there's so much additional training for it. So I've done the basics. And so I use something called inward and out, in and out window. Gosh, now you got me with the inward. Anyway.
Sorry.
Basically, I hold up that. It looks like a wand, right? And there's, and I will go in front of you. And it's basically, they discovered it by this little reaction to the eye movement, that when the person looked a certain way, there was a little reflex. And again, there's a lot more science behind this, but it was a guy who was using EMDR, and he was treating as an ice skater who could not land this certain jump. Anyway, a lot more details to it, but when he was doing the EMDR, most often it goes back and forth, right? But he noticed in her vision, her eyes did something a little, like this twitch. Anyway, he focused on that spot, and lo and behold, after sessions and stuff, she was able to land. But there was something, how it was stuck on her brain where she
when
looked.
You get fixed.
Yes. And if you even think about it, like, it makes sense, like, and it sounds very basic. Where you look does affect how you feel, right? Like, say if I was sitting here chomping on a lemon, like, and you watch me in the lemon juice, and you probably start to pucker, like, you almost get that, right? Same with,
but even when you're lying or telling the truth or remembering a story, right? The way they say, the way that you look when you're trying to recall things, you look, I think, to the left because I'm trying to remember things. But then if you're looking to the right, you're lying or whatever, right? So
yeah, that's very true. And I'll do it. I notice sometimes my clients too, because I'll be looking up and I'm trying to explain something. I do that a lot when I'm really trying to figure out how I'm trying to get my point across. And sometimes they kind of go like this, like, what is she looking at? But that's just what I do, right? Yeah. It's just how I can gather my thoughts. But yeah, you're absolutely right. So even with that, sometimes your eyes don't want to look a certain way, and that could be that little reflex, right? And trying to get on it. But when Tamara did it, she was full that day she came in and did it. Like, she was heightened and triggered when she came in. So it was actually very easy to do. Like, it was the eye wobble.
So you've seen my eye.
It was just so
crazy.
Yeah. But you came in like just.
Oh yeah.
It took nothing. Some people it might take a little longer, and
I feel like it would take me a long time.
Yeah.
I feel like I go into a seizure.
It's very exhausting though. Like EMDR,
is.
It's so exhausting because you are opening up all those floodgates that have been closed for so long. And it really, like, people think it's like witchy and shit, but like it's really not. Like it really does work. And I mean, I know myself, and for a lot of people that have done EMDR, you know, maybe not brain spotting as much because it is a little bit obviously new to the field, but it does really allow for for those brain waves to be reopened and kind of retrained, essentially.
Right. And they call it like a bottoms up approach, and meaning like it's more about where that trauma is being held in your body, right? And you think of people with fibromyalgia, irritable bowel syndrome, right? I mean, they've had some probably real
it all goes back to the holistic, you know, mind, body, and soul.
It's like people that go to like a naturopath, like Maddie, our friend Maddie. I'm sure she has no problem saying, like, they work on her hip, and she always has this like very like intense emotional release. Yeah. When she stores her trauma and, you know, emotions in this one spot in her body.
Right. And if you ever watch a National Geographic movie, right, if they're, you know, you got the scientists up in the helicopter and they're chasing a polar bear, and say they dart them to, you know, get their measurements or whatever. When the polar bear gets up after he wakes up, they shake. They're shaking because they're trying to release that trauma, right? They're trying to get, and it's actually, studies have shown that some animals that don't shake it off can die, right? But
because they're holding on to that trauma,
right? It like,
that's crazy.
Yeah. Have you ever? There was actually a National Geographic. It was a bird that had been so scared to death, right? Right.
It's a thing.
Yeah. What do humans do after trauma? We bury it, right? We just sit with it.
Wow. Until it
and
comes up again, because it does.
It does.
It's a wound, right?
Yeah. Sometime it will show its face, unfortunately, or fortunately, whatever you can do. But yeah, so that's what brain spotting EMDR tries to get to, that, right?
Desensitize that.
Yeah. And they use I don't know if they do it with EMDR. Do they play bilateral music or anything like that?
Bilateral sensors. So I held on to these two sensors, and they would vibrate, go back and forth.
Okay. Yeah. Some use that with the brain spotting. Again, I'm going back for another course in the spring, just because there's so much.
That's amazing.
Yeah, to learn about it. And I'll be honest, I went in and had someone do it to me, and I went in with the hokey pokey.
Yeah, the witchy stuff.
Yeah, and I was like, shit.
Yeah. I mean,
that's
really
like that.
Unique.
Yeah.
That's really unique for, I feel like, around here to be able to offer that as well. So that's great that you can promote that.
Yeah.
Here.
And even like besides Tamara, I've had some other ones that have come in, and, you know, they came in with the same thing, and they were just like, wow. And it can be triggering too, right? So that's the other piece. You got to really
healing from that experience.
Trying to make sure the person knows how to ground themselves and, you know, regulate their nervous system when they do it, because
it's exhausting.
Yeah, right. Yeah. It's
cool.
It was an interesting, very different.
Yeah, it is.
Well, Trish, before we wrap up, I just wanted you to maybe talk a little bit about your inward and upward practice, and how people can maybe locate you, and if you are taking on new clients.
Yeah, sure.
How they would go about that.
Yeah, I'm part of the Napanee. I think we're Napanee Collective.
Yes,
yeah,
Counseling Collective, yeah.
So I'm at 116 John Street. I share an office with another therapist there. So I'm there in person Mondays and Wednesdays. Tuesday, Thursdays I do virtual, and the Friday's a hit or miss. It's either maybe virtual, maybe in person, depending on but yeah, and it's Trisha the Therapist at gmail.com. And
Well, and we'll link your page too.
I like I say, anxiety, trauma, grief are my top end, and disordered eating, body dysmorphia and all those. But yeah, there's not one that I don't work with. If it's something that I don't know, we're great at referring.
Yeah, absolutely. You guys are a beautiful team.
Yeah, I'm
wonderful.
Again, I say I won the lottery by.
Yeah,
and I'm a big fan. So
and I am too now. So
all right, well, thank you again.
Thank you for joining us. That's fun.
Thank you for joining us, Joey.
And
he's awake
and
now.
That's it.
Yeah, he's woken up now. And 2024 off to a good start. So
and remember to like and subscribe.